the sculpture of history. The large structure was built on the high ground above the street level. The ground at the base of the hill was an ideal place for a small lake. Nature had not provided it, so Mr. Studebaker, hoping to find a flowing well, drilled many feet below the surface, but the water refused to rise sufficiently to create the desired lake. Seems like JM just had problems with water one way or the other throughout his entire life. And as you can see, they did not have a water feature after Tippecanoe, it seems like without any lack of trying. That article was in 1950, late 1950, the property, the Tippecanoe was torn down. Mrs. Studebaker moved into the carriage house, and the entire J.M. Studebaker farm was then subsidized into properties, and that's how the lots are situated now. You see many of South Bend's first families have occupied the homes along East Jefferson there, and really remains a showpiece from the historic homes tour of South Bend. Okay, can anyone identify this building here?
Studebaker.
Excellent answer, Jim, but wrong. This is, believe it or not, this is the original part of the Freeman Spicer building, the former home of the Studebaker National Museum. This was built in 1916 as a service station and retail shop for Studebaker products. And this picture is actually facing southeast here, so this is Lafayette Street. Here's South Street over here. But they quickly outgrew the small one-story structure, so they had to expand. You see, this is how the building appeared. Again, South Street, Lafayette Street. See showroom listing here and the other shops. The Studebaker used this as a retail outlet and also to service car. If they had a particular tough service problem with a car, it would be brought here, and this was like the company kind of facility for finding mysterious problems, maybe doing a little engineering work there. But the building was increased to an extra floor in 1926, and then it was expanded, almost doubled in size to the north just a couple of years later. Now we refer to it today, our shorthand around the museum is the Sherman Chouse, or I'm sorry, the Freeman Spicer building, but really it was originally the Sherman Chouse dealership. When the Sherman Chouse people bought it from Studebaker, when Studebaker got out of the retail business. Mr. Chouse passed away in 1930. Otto Sherman passed away in 1939. Gilbert Chouse sold his interest in the company to Victor Freeman in 1951, and Eli Spicer, Mr. Freeman's son-in-law, also bought into the company, and that's when it was renamed Freeman Spicer. So technically, you have the Sherman Chouse or Sherman Chouse Freeman or Freeman Spicer names that were applied to this Studebaker dealership. It's one of my favorite pictures. Just right after World War II, things are going great. Guns, M-Series truck right there. Studebakers all over the place. What could be better? Well, after Studebaker closed, Freeman Spicer took to selling a number. They had the Mercedes-Benz franchise. They were later selling Chrysler products. And it was home to the Studebaker National Museum beginning about in the early 1980s, and we remained our home until 2005, until we moved over to our new facilities just next door here. As they were taking down the building, we were surprised that the facade right under the front there, you could still see the Freeman Spicer name and Mercedes-Benz automobiles. And certainly many cars were sold through this dealership over the years. Now, Studebaker numbered their dealerships, starting with number 1 up until, Ben, what are we up to now? About 4,500 in your roster there? Freeman Spicer they kept the same dealership number through their entire tenure. They were dealership number 108 in Studebaker's dealer roster. Well now, so is the car very big or are the people very small? In 1930, Studebaker sought to really promote in a grand way their brand new President line. So the 1931 Presidents, the Model 80 and 90 came off the line spring of that year, and Studebaker's experimental body department built a 40-foot long wooden replica of a 1931 Studebaker President four-season Roadster. And when I say replica, they went to exacting, exhausting details to make sure this was identical to the production model. The production car had 36 louvers on the hood. This model has 36 louvers. The same number of spokes were used. Everything down to the detail, the little ridges in the running board, or in the splash aprons here. This detail was only found on the President's model. It was replicated piece by piece. The tires, now mind you, these are not pneumatic tires, but these tires are actually real tires that were custom made by Firestone to accommodate the big car. The only deviation was the rear-mounted spare tire. Production 31 President four-season Roadsters had side mounts. They never offered a rear-mounted spare in on the production line. And one of our trustees actually interviewed the gentleman in charge of the experimental body department. They talked at length, and he still had a notebook detailing every expenditure they made in building this car. And he was asked, well, why did you have the rear-mounted spare on the tires when all the production models were side-mounted spares? And he said, he paused for a moment, looked at me and said, I have absolutely no idea. I'd love to give you an answer for that, but sometimes that's the way things happen. As you can imagine, it was a regular attraction. I mean, this is Highway 2 today. Bendix Woods County Park, this former Studebaker Proving Grounds. This sat on a prominent knoll just about 100 yards west of the Studebaker Proving Ground main gate, which is still, it's now the Navistar main gate there. But there's been some debate as to where the car actually stood. And many people have thought it's at the very top of the hill where I think it's Timothy Road goes down now. It was actually much further to the east. And it's set, as you can see, just not far off the roadway. Well, during World War II, they widened State Road 2 to 4 lanes. And I had always assumed, well, they're not going to widen it to the Studebaker side where all the fencing and all the property was. They'd widen it the other side where it was pretty much a couple farmhouses. But no, they actually bought the property from Studebaker and widened the highway to the south. And in 1974, I think it's Carcraft magazine, they interviewed E.T. Reynolds, who was the superintendent of the Proving Ground. And he mentioned that actually, yeah, where the big car stood is now partially under the right-of-way for the expanded highway. So if you're driving out that way, just imagine the car just kind of hanging above you in the air as you drive past the Proving Ground. Great place to get your photo taken, especially when you too have just bought a 1931 President four-season Roadster. Well, this is not any 1931 President. These are the Grays, Mr. and Mrs. Gray of South Bend. This picture was taken in late 1931, going in, I think just in the spring of 1932. But in the span of a year, they had put over 80,000 miles on their brand new 1931 President. And apparently they had a guy who knew how to keep the car clean, because that doesn't look like a car that's got 80,000 miles on the clock. But this appeared in the Studebaker Wheel magazine for Studebaker owners. Hollywood could not resist the beckon of the big Studebaker out of the Proving Ground, where they filmed a short film for RKO Studios called Wildflowers that talks about, well, we'll let you see how it turns out. Hinted. Okay, Pat, let's hit it. So I can't think of a better way to spend an afternoon than taking a nap and listening to the radio and listening to the president. For the Studebaker Champions Orchestra, who are the jumpsuited men performing in the passenger compartment of 31. For years, we had thought that film was lost. It was made originally a nitrate stock film, which does not age well, to say the least. And we had looked high and low for years and years and years. And how generally things work in our business is someone called up and said, hey, I found a copy of this film sitting in the attic of my garage. It's called Wildflowers. Would you be interested? Yes, we're very interested in it. But the thing was, okay, now that the dog has caught the squirrel, what do we do with this? Because we don't really want that. We don't have facilities to convert it or anything. The Library of Congress does. So that volume now rests with the Library of Congress, and they graciously provided us with a DVD of the film. And the film was actually in very nice shape, which is great. It was hardly deteriorated at all. I also found when you have to ship nitrate stock film, it's actually considered a flammable solid. So for a period of 5 years, I took an online class and was certified to ship flammable solids. Not that really helped. Didn't give me a raise or anything like that, Pat, but just saying. But how do you get rid of a wooden car that after 6 years and South Bend winters and doesn't look like the new models? Well, you set it on fire, because what else are you going to do? Studebaker made a big production out of this. They actually sent out a photographer, they doused the front fender in gasoline, and they said it took all of 36 minutes for the car to be reduced to embers. But we had a few things, as you notice, the hubcaps were taken off there. The tail light was removed, and the rumble seat was open. And what do you do with the leftover parts? Well, apparently a couple of the tires were in very good shape. We see there's the tail light sitting there. And I'm going to ask Pat to come out down front, because I need a trusty assistant here for the next bit of it. And the tires were chucked in the infield of the Studebaker Proving Ground until World War II, when suddenly scrap drives were going on. And there was a whole lot of rubber on these tires that could have gone for the war. So they sent these two gentlemen who seemed really thrilled with their job to find these and strip the rubber off them to go to the war effort. Now I mentioned the hubcaps were taken off. Pat here, this is actually one of the hubcaps from the big car. We do have another one on display in the gallery, and we thought some folks might like to see it a little more up close and personal. And also in the category of things you never know what the next phone call will bring. I remember this vividly. It was like a Friday afternoon at 4:30, and got a phone call, or no, I was handed a phone message that said, "Lady called about Studebaker hubcap." Okay, we get that call about once every couple of weeks. People move into a house, they find some hubcaps in the garage or in an attic, and like, okay, it's going to be another doggish lark hubcap. So, but we always follow through. You never know why it come up, and this is the actual reason why. She's like, "Oh yeah, my grandfather worked there, and they had this sitting in the basement of their rec room for the last 70 years, I think she said." But we're delighted to have that as part of the collection. So if you see, there's 3 more of these out there, and also the taillight we just saw sitting there on the ground. So if you see one of these in a basement rec room or at a yard sale, please contact Pat or me. So we're going to wind it up right now. From here, I could not have put together this talk without the help of many local history professionals, Alicia Fiesel and the Historic Preservation Commission, the St. Joseph County Library's local history, family and history department. All the clippings that I got from the tribute came out of there and through the microfilm collection. The History Museum, one of our life trustees, Mr. Richard Quinn, provided me the pictures of the guys stripping the rubber off the tires, and the interior pictures of Tippett Canoe and the demo pictures of the Kresge building actually came from the Southern Truths Photo Archives. So with that, again, as always, we have a bunch of cookies out in the museum store, and we also many wonderful things for sale there as well. If you need a souvenir to take home with you. Our next topic, what did we say the date on this next talk was, Pat? July 17th?
17th.
July 17th. Learn some more about local history. This time, landmarks that are still with us or are coming back. And we have our literature up here on the counter. Gladly take some questions right now if anyone has some. Dr. Feldman.
Yeah, did you know I've read